So welcome to yet another episode of Sitecore Tech Talks, and today we have Daivagna Nanavati, who has been working on XM Cloud components and XM Cloud solution for a good amount of time now. So let's welcome him on the show.
Hi, Varun.
Hi Daivagna, welcome to Sitecore Tech Talks.
Pleasure.
All right, let's have a seat.
Sure.
All right, so Daivagna has overall 15 plus years of experience in IT industry, has worked on many solutions and architecturally complex websites and experiences and applications, and from last 5 years he is here at Horizontal. Started off as a tech lead, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, and right now serving as a senior technology lead and working on XM Cloud solutions. So let's check, or let's ask his for his experience, and let's see what all we discover today. So Daivagna, I would like to check. I'm hearing a lot about XM Cloud components these days. So what is the buzz all about these XM Cloud components?
Yeah. So, well, same question I had when it actually released. Probably, so I'm following XM Cloud components from maybe January, February.
Mm-hmm.
But the buzz is because the industry, the LCAPS industry. So that is low-code application platforms. Technologies going and having a shift there. So because XM Cloud components is an offering which is kind of a no-code configuration, like actually you can you can configure everything without writing a code, and you will have probably a microsites up and running in a very less amount of time. So because it's a low-code, no-code platform, that's why it's a buzz. And as from a .NET background, in a web applications, if you want to create drag and drop interfaces, and make sure that it's not only drag and drop, but it is actually a workable component which you can reuse at multiple sites without writing a code. So that's why it's a lot of buzz, and that's where the industry is going. And yeah, also the Gartner forecast for LCAPS, that is low code, no code platforms, it's said to be like growing 25% every year.
Yeah.
And that's why it feels like Sitecore is actually digging the right mine. They are going in the right track, and it's my personal favorite as well. So yeah.
Right. So you mentioned about low code, no code. So does low code, no code mean it's simply a drag and drop?
It is actually. So it has a lot of configuration, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically it is created to create like pixel perfect world class UI without a need of a developer, right? So your content authors or your marketers. So basically it provides a canvas where you can simply drag and drop your block elements, your inline elements like a div or card, image, video, whatnot. Possibilities are endless, and you can have a configured component right there, and you can use it on your upper environments. So it's actually a no code, low code.
All right. Well, I have a question mainly from a developer mindset here. With headless applications and XM Cloud, we are creating React and Next components. In this particular scenario, I would like to know the difference between a React or a Next component that I will create or develop, and an XM Cloud component which is already available or there in the system. What is the difference between these two overall?
I would say good question, because it is very little confusing. Where there is a thin line until and unless you kind of really research and see, okay, that's where the difference is. I personally had the same question, so I'm glad that you asked. So there are two types of component, right? One is which you create. So the React component that we create and probably register in our on React app, and which gets deployed. So technically you will see two different segregation in XM Cloud.
Yeah.
One is your SXA component and the component that you created which got deployed, and then there is another tab called front end as a service tab. So it's called Feaas, if you know the term. It's called front end as a service.
Looks like Fast and Furious.
That's correct. So it is actually Fast and Furious offering from XM Cloud. But yeah, so the difference is it actually provides you the separate component tab.
Mm-hmm.
And a separate component tab, and over there what you can do is you can style them, you can have a canvas, you can drag and drop things, configure them, create a data source, maybe have a workflow. So it has a separate life cycle altogether. So I hope I was able to answer, saying your components, React components that you create are separate, and then this component is completely separate offering than XM Cloud as well. XM Cloud Components is a separate app which gives you the like low code, no code application, small application where you can create your own components which are separated from your native components that you build.
Can we talk about this, taking a real world example of a website with some components which technically are already a part of XM Cloud Components library versus some React components which we have to do? Again, this question is mainly because you have recently worked on an XM Cloud solution, and I think it's just on the verge of getting live.
Correct.
So I believe that learning, if somehow we can share with the community, sure, as a mode of this episode, maybe we'll add some value to them.
Correct. Yep. So XM Cloud Components, what the decision that we came to made was that so there were microsites, right? And there was a need that, okay, sometimes what if the developer outage is there? So we also wanted to train our content authors saying, hey, this is the mode you can just simply, with a limited knowledge of your tools, you can simply assemble this component. So consider something that my website is going live, and I want to have some small notification bar saying, hey, we are stopping this service and after 3 days we are going live. Or maybe your coupon code went live 2 days, like last night, where there is a developer outage, and you want to have some kind of a component saying, hey, sitting on the top saying, hey, my website is going live, and then I want to have without developer involvement. So all those kind of things, small things also you can do, and absolutely you can do wonders in Canvas as well. You can write GraphQL queries. So if you have a playground, right? People who are working with GraphQL playground knows that you can configure your query, you can write a data source or context item, you configure a token, and then once you're satisfied with your output on the right hand side, you can take that query, put it in the XM Cloud component, and literally you can map those properties which are coming back from the schema to the label or card or div or image. So that means you have a data source pointer, you are simply saying, hey, display first name in this label, display this image on the left hand side. It's as simple as that. So use case can be many. I mean, it depends on when you want to use it.
Right. Can I consider XM Cloud Components as building blocks of a bigger component?
I would not say that, because it's a completely separate stuff. Why I will not say this is because your React component, right? Those are specifically designed to give you more flexibility, to extensibility. You can do many stuffs there. You can have your complex component architecture, a large DOM manipulation, everything you can do there. Yeah. But XM Cloud Components is something where if I talk about the three main offering in the component, saying it has a static JSON offering. So that means consider a website where it's behind VPN, right? Or it's behind firewall.
Correct.
Now you can't ping something continuously if it's behind firewall. So in that case, so if we take the example of SUGCON speakers, right? Yeah. So SUGCON speaker list is updated for some time, and then speakers are locked. It's not going to update. So you can take that JSON, you can put it in the configuration of the XM Cloud component and use it in the XM Cloud.
Great example of how we can utilize, from a real. This is exactly what I was looking for from a real world example perspective. If you can provide any more such examples.
Sure. There is another option called GraphQL, for example. So now consider you have a website on Content Hub 1, or maybe Content Hub, or anything which is out there on Experience Edge, right? Your delivery as a delivery platform. So the help that it gets is you can get any data which is out there on Experience Edge. Yeah. You can write a GraphQL query against it, and believe me, it's absolutely dynamic. Once the component is configured, it is talking to your Experience Edge, your component starts reading the data from straight. So one of the example would be, maybe I have a blog website, right? and those blogs. So I'm centrally, it's my central repository of my blog, right? So I write blog on WordPress. Now I want to show the same blogs on my different portal, right? It's a very common requirement. Or maybe I have a product repository, right? A PIM. I want to draft my product there, but I want to show the featured product on my page. So my products are there on Experience Age. I can simply read my featured product and I show it on my micro website simply by no code. Absolutely. Of course, by writing GraphQL.
Yeah, this is I think these are great advantages of having XM Cloud components. I'm sure while using, you would have identified some shortcomings or limitations of XM Cloud components. If you have encountered one such or maybe a few such, can you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. So I won't say limitation, but the first and the most is it's early access. So things might change for what you see. So currently Sitecore team is absolutely like dig down and working on to improvising experience, and they are bringing in the React APIs using which you can write server-side components, and you can use the same canvas to drop your components and modify and take it from there. So extensibility and stuff, but because it's in early access, things might change from what you see currently. If you have seen the XM Cloud component, you will see the early access. So that is one thing. And then of course, because it's a web component, I think majority of the community doesn't know that XM Cloud components are a web component. Now web component is absolutely like it's a different topic altogether, but web components are something, it has its own DOM. So that means it has its own encapsulations, right? So it doesn't know what is in your DOM. It has its own particular HTML tag, and everything is kind of done there. So yeah, it has some limitation because they are rendered on the client side currently. So that's one of that, and yeah, you need some specific version of JSS CLI. Otherwise, you won't be able to work with the XM Cloud components.
The reason this question that I'm going to ask right now is specifically because a lot of our audience would have already used SXA.
Correct.
Right? So if I want to relate these XM Cloud components with SXA components, is there a way in which logically I can relate them?
I won't say yes to it, because I believe XM Cloud components is a absolutely separate stuff. SXA is, yeah, one thing you can relate to is you can create variants, right? So in SXA, if you have a promo, for example, where you have an image on the left hand side and some textual information on the right hand side. Now you want the same component, but you want to switch it over. So you want image on the right, and so some little variations, right? You are not going to create a new component every time. That's not a best practice. So yes, that is a similarity where XM Cloud components give the variation like this. So it's not rigid saying, hey, create a new component every time. But if you have this kind of need, you can easily create a variation and then take it from there.
Great. I believe you were also a speaker at Sitecore SUGCON 2023 this year. So, and I think it is just good to check. I believe this was the same topic like XM Cloud and components was.
Yeah, so the topic actually was Feaas and Furious offering from XM Cloud. So it's not Furious, but it's Feaas. So that is front end as a service. But it's a Furious opening. That's what we meant. But yeah,
I would like to know your experience, and because I was also a speaker, I know there were a lot of questions which followed up either on the booth or while talking to people, while networking. Did you get any such questions which the community members asked you post your presentation, which you can elaborate to a larger audience?
Sure. I'm glad that you asked this, because so yeah, presentation, like we presented on the SUGCON 2023 in Delhi, and the presentation was awesome, and there were follow-up questions like community wanted to know what is it and how it works. And so of course, because there is a early access, there is not too detailed documentation or of the engineering behind the scene out there. So there were especially two questions that I took as a homework, because I was not able to answer them because I did not have the right answer. So I just say I was not able to answer, saying because Sitecore did not have information about it. But now, as I have the answer, I would like to take this opportunity to maybe give back those answers to the community who asked those questions. So especially first question was around because XM Cloud component is a web component, and because it was me who showed on the screen saying everything is stored on Azure Blob. So XM Cloud is a separate offering. XM Cloud Components is a separate offering. Now that was eyebrow raising for me as well. Yeah, so there is a two separate delivery happening. So your Pages app and everything SXA components are getting delivered to your XM Cloud Pages using standard headless delivery fashion, using CD and Vercel, whatnot. But XM Cloud Components has a separate delivery channel. So those are stored on Azure Blobs, and then they are getting served from there. That is very surprising.
It's interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what I showed to the community, and one of the community member saw the network log, and he asked me that if you have 20 components, because I configured like around 10 components, and he said 10-15 components. So we were seeing like more than 15 calls being made just to render the component, and it was a very right question. The best practice is not to hit the server or make the too many requests.
Correct.
So at that time I was not sure about the answer, but the answer to that is, and I will also give courtesy to some of the members later on whom I reached out to for the questions and answer. But the answer to that question is that even if they are making requests, it's just the head request. So what they mean is your rendering of the page is separate than your component rendering. So it doesn't block anything. So your FCP, that is first content painful, is not there. So there is no page lag, there is no score, lower score. So technically you are absolutely good there. They are working on improvising that, that's what I heard, but this is how it works. The second question was that how to deploy XM Cloud components. Now I was also scratching my head saying React components I can deploy easily, but how to deploy XM Cloud components? But with to answer that, XM Cloud components, if your project, right, if your environment like dev, QA, production, if they are in the same project, then there is no need of deployment.
Yeah,
exactly. So they are being shared among all the environments. So you configure once and use it everywhere.
Correct.
Now, if you want to change something, you can anytime restage them, make it in draft mode, configure it again, and publish. So I wanted to answer those two questions which I got on the presentation, especially thanks to Andy Cohen, Rob, and then Sebastian Winter and Jason. So this guy, I reached out and asked a lot of questions about it, and there was just like a Slack message, and they were pretty helpful in that. So yep, that's what it's all about.
All right. This explains a lot as far as XM Cloud components go. I have had a chance to look at XM Cloud, but I have not really plunged into XM Cloud components. Probably with this episode is a good insight into it and a good starter for me, wherein I'm sure I'll be looking at XM Cloud components a little bit, the fast and furious components, I'll say. And thank you for your time, Daivagna.
Pleasure.
And for sharing all the details about your experience of working with XM Cloud components. I am sure the members of Sitecore Tech Talks will also be gaining a lot of knowledge because of this episode.
Sure.
And before we end, I would also like to thank Alok Kadu Deshmukh and Harsh Mithapara for their help and support in making this episode a reality.
Absolutely.
For making sure that all these things are set up well and that we can record this episode and share it with the community.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you all. See you all in the next episode.
Thank you.
Bye bye.